Your level of productivity does not determine your worth. It is time to redefine what it means to be productive so you can end your cycle of burnout and unnecessary output. In this episode, you'll learn what it really means to be productive, how your relationship with being productive might be completely unproductive, and 2 questions to ask yourself to help you break your cycle of toxic productivity. Now, before we go any further, please hit pause and drop a rating and review on iTunes. If you've already done this, thank you so much. But if you have yet to do this for this podcast, please do so now. And if you have any questions about this episode or have topic suggestions for future episodes, please shoot me a text message at 1-781-336-0160. Now it is time to break the productivity myth. Hey, thought leaders, welcome back. Yeah, it's been a month since I have shared a new episode on the podcast. And yeah, like I said in the last episode that aired, there are going to be some changes moving forward with today's thought leader. And one of those changes is going to be that you're going to be hearing more solo episodes from me. And there are still some other changes that I have yet to implement that I will be implementing coming soon. But rather than try and push all the changes in one go, because, perfectionism doesn't really help or serve any of us, I'm going to be rolling things out as they roll out. So that's happening. I'd like to share a little bit before I dive into today's topic and what I really feel called to chat about. I'd like to share a little bit about the last month and taking a hiatus on the podcast. So the first draft of my book is finally in the hands of my editor. Snaps to that. It feels really good to have accomplished this leg of the book publishing process, 55,000 words written. And it was quite the journey. And it's a journey that is still happening. Now I'm on the next stage of my book writing. So stay tuned for that. But it was just nice to be able to give myself that space to focus all my creative energies on the book. And this is going to be something that I dive into most likely next week on creativity and how we need space for our creativity, and why we can experience creativity burnout. So that's coming. So stay tuned for that episode. But for me, it was just really important to devote just some real time and space for the book writing process, because for any of you who've written a book, you know this. For those of you who want to write a book, keep this in mind, that the book is going to take shape how it needs to take shape. We can't force it to happen. And when you force the book to be something, it's not going to be what you want it to be or what it needs to be. You have to allow the space for the book to breathe, for your creativity to breathe, and for it to become what it needs to become. And so I really feel that I gave myself that space this month, and I'll probably be continue to give myself more space as I step into the next stages of my book. But it was also nice just to have that time off of creating so much. For those of you who follow me on social media, I took a break on that too. I wasn't posting. I mean, there were a few weeks where I wasn't sharing anything at all on Instagram. I started up on my stories a little bit at a time, and now I've actually changed my sharing habits on Instagram, where you might not see posts from me every single day. Which means that I've gotten rid of my daily potent truth quotes, because, I don't want to feel like I have to show up every day, because quite frankly, I don't want to show up every day. So there's just been a lot of interesting shifts that have come from this hiatus, and moving forward, more shifts that will continue to unravel. But I share that with you because I just want you to understand that there is so much power in giving yourself these breaks and these spaces. And we don't always have to be producing or doing all the time. And that's what we're talking about today. So today I want to talk about breaking the productivity myth, right? Because in entrepreneurship and leadership, there are a lot of myths about productivity and how we need to be productive, which can often translate into busying ourselves. And when you busy yourself, you're not necessarily being productive, but also when you're being productive, quite often you're defining productivity in a very narrow-minded binary way. And that's what I want to start this conversation off with, is to really define productivity. Okay, so productivity is all about producing. What does it mean to produce? Well, to produce means to bring into existence, to give rise to cause something to happen or something to take effect or something to take shape. That's what it means to produce something, and that's what productivity is all about. We're producing. So when did we get shit twisted where to produce something means that it has to be something that is external from us? Like, when did that happen? To produce something means that it has to be something external, tangible, that other people can see, touch, feel, or experience. When did that happen? That's not what it means to produce things. And yet, here we are as a society believing that in order to be productive, we need to produce things that are external from us that other people can experience. When did that fucked up view on productivity start? I'd like to know, really, because this is a view that I carried with me, and I think most of you carry with you and aren't even aware of it, that gets us into these cycles of doing, and then depletion. Or it gets us into these cycles of like keeping ourselves busy, of busying ourselves, of putting more on our plate because that somehow makes us feel better, right? Quote unquote better, because we're producing more. But what the fuck are we actually producing here? What are we actually producing? Which brings me to how intertwined self-worth has become with productivity. It's almost like the more that I produce, the more worthy I feel. Or the more that I produce, the better I am. Like, look at me producing all these things, these videos, these IG posts, this Facebook posts, these podcast episodes, this book, these things. Look at all these things that I'm doing and producing. That makes me better. It makes me good. It makes me feel like I am enough. These external things that I am producing validates my existence. Yes. And yet we all do this, right? It sounds fucked up when I say it like that, but we all do this. We all do this. We get into this like productivity trap where we think that in order for us to feel worthy or to be validated, we need to produce things that are external of us, you know? And that the more that we do, the better we become. And this sort of belief system is ingrained, especially in the mindsets of entrepreneurs, uh, especially because we're trying to prove ourselves, right? When you're starting a business, when you're starting to put yourself out there, when you're starting to show up for your movement, spread your message, like you really want to prove yourself to people around you because you're not feeling worthy on your own, right? So productivity actually becomes this like security blanket to make you feel more secure when you feel insecure about yourself. I'm going to say that again. Productivity becomes a security blanket to make you feel more secure because you feel insecure. And productivity defined as doing all things, where you end up getting yourself into this rut of doing for the sake of doing. Like at some point, you don't even know what you're doing, why you're doing. You're just doing because you've created this habit of doing, and you think you need to do in order to feel worthy, in order to validate yourself, in order to feel good, in order to feel secure. What a messed up trap we've found ourselves in, right? No wonder you're feeling stressed. No wonder you're feeling burnt out. No wonder you're feeling tired. No wonder you might even be resenting what you're doing. You might even be resenting your client work. You might even be resenting your content creation. You might even be resenting every single fucking aspect of what it is that you're building, because you've lost sight of why you're doing what you're doing. Productivity is a good thing, but we need to really understand what it means. Going back to the definition, it's to produce, to bring into existence, to give rise to cause something to happen, which means that this isn't always something that is external. This can also be internal. On one of my calls with my Thought Leader Collective, I think it was last week, we were talking about rest, because a lot of them are in this season of resting, which is a great place to be. You know, they're just in this season of resting. And we were talking about the shame that can come up, that can arise when you're in that period of rest, where it's like, you know, you need to rest because you're burnt out, or you know, you need to rest because you just really feel called to rest, but then you feel this weird shame associated with it because rest doesn't feel productive. Well, let me tell you, rest is productive as fuck, right? Rest, if you start looking at productivity as both an external and internal game, right? This isn't just about what you're producing outside of yourself. It's what you're producing within yourself, what you're giving rise to within yourself, what you're bringing into existence within yourself. And when we rest, we're nourishing ourselves. We're refueling, we're resetting, we're regrounding, all of which are beneficial to us in the work that we do. So rest is productive as fuck. And you need to start considering all these things that you once considered as unproductive as possibly being the things that are the most productive. You know, this past weekend, or at the time of recording it, this episode, this past weekend, I sat in ceremony again with ayahuasca. For those of you who are new to this podcast, I am in a very, very deep, lifelong relationship with ayahuasca and plant medicines. So I sat this weekend after handing in my book, my first draft of my book, and it was a really, really powerful weekend for me. And I rested, and I have so much rest incorporated into this week as well, just to continue integrating. And this is productive for me. To rest is productive. To let what came up for me this past weekend in ceremony, to let that sink in, to integrate what I learned, that is productive. We don't have to just always be in this performance of doing all the things in order to feel as if we are producing something beneficial, because that production gets to start within ourselves. So it's important for you to start to redefine what productivity actually means, because the shared, like, true definition of this is to produce, to bring into existence, to give rise to cause. And so for me, rest, what that brings into existence is a nourished soul. Rest, what that gives rise to is more sustainable energy, right? Which then can help me in the external productivity of my business, of my life. And the way in which you've intertwined your sense of worthiness with productivity, you get to now create a detachment from that, because you're not better for doing more. Right? You're not better for doing more. You're not better for producing more things external of you. You have to feel that worthiness from within and be able to provide more depth. I think we tend to look at life in a very binary fashion, in a very linear fashion, right? Like where we move from start to finish. And when we think about productivity, we think about like all these things that you're doing on this very linear timeline, and you disregard the depth on that timeline. Now there is a depth uh, in life within us. We aren't just linear beings. And so if you're just constantly moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, thinking that you're being productive as fuck, let me tell you, you are avoiding a whole bunch of shit in the middle. You're avoiding the depth, you're avoiding the substance. And a lot of those things can only happen when you shift from external production to internal production, and you take that time to integrate, you take that time to rest, you take that time to nourish yourself, you take that time to commit to your self-care, to devote yourself to your self-care, to do those things for yourself, so that you're feeling so that you're producing the things that you need to produce from within you. That is just as, if not more important than the external production. So just like I always say, leadership is an inner game, production is an inner game. Like production isn't just about what you're producing outside of yourself. It's not about all these things that you're doing. It's about who you're being along the way. It's about how you're taking care of yourself. It's about what you're shifting from the inside out. It's about what you're creating, causing, bringing into existence, giving rise to from the inside out. And often when you focus on that internal production, your external production will shift, and you'll start to focus on producing only the things that feel super aligned, only the things that are actually really lighting you up, only the things that are really truly aligned with your purpose, your mission, your vision. But that can only happen when you focus on the internal production. So this old belief system that we carry as a society, as entrepreneurs in your life, when it comes to productivity, it's time to break that productivity myth and time to redefine what it really means for you. And so a couple of questions to ask yourself, because you know me, I love giving you some reflective questions. Question number one is, well, let me give you some context first. So questions to ask yourself when you find yourself in that cycle of productivity. Like maybe right now you're thinking to yourself, like, am I in this like cycle of producing for the sake of producing, or using doing as a security blanket to feel more secure? Like, am I in this cycle? Well, if you find yourself in that cycle, which most likely you are, ask yourself these two questions. One, what are you bringing into existence? So instead of using productivity, the word productivity, I want you to ask yourself, what am I bringing into existence? What am I bringing into existence through all this shit that I'm doing? What am I bringing into existence? Because you might have been assuming that you're bringing into existence, I'm bringing into existence these podcast episodes and these blog posts and these videos and these Instagram posts. Like, I'm bringing all this into existence, but you might also be bringing into existence stress, a resentment towards the work that you're doing, an energetic depletion. You may also be bringing those things into existence. So what am I bringing into existence? And question number two, why am I bringing these things into existence? So if, again, it's the podcast episodes, the YouTube videos, the IG content, and then also the stress, the energetic depletion, why are you bringing this into existence? Why? It's just another way to ask yourself, why the fuck am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing it because I see other people doing it and I think I need to do the same in order to be just as good as them or better than them? Am I doing this because I believe that I need to do these things in order to feel good about myself? Why are you in this cycle of productivity? So ask yourself, what are you bringing into existence, and why are you bringing this into existence? because that's what productivity is all about. It's what you're bringing into existence. It's what you're giving rise to. It's what you're causing to happen. And those aren't just things that are external. Those are internal things too. Those are how you're left feeling after you're doing all these things and producing all these things that are outside of yourself. So I'm going to leave that with you. And I would really, really love to hear from you in regards to this. Like I offer things like reflective questions because I actually want you to do the fucking thing. Like I want you to reflect on this, and I want you to use these questions as a starting point to start shifting your relationship with productivity so that you can get into a healthier relationship with your life, with your business, with all the things that you're doing, and with the ways in which you're showing up as a leader. So shoot me a text message and share with me an insight that you gained from this episode and also answering these questions. So my number is 1-781-336-0160. Shoot me a text message and share what came up for you and a major insight from this episode. You can also, if you have any topic suggestions for this podcast, like feel free to text me. And the number will be in the show notes. For now, that's it for this episode. Like I said, next week we're going to talk about creation and our creative energies and how to really feel consistently fueled in our creativity and what we need to happen, the boundaries we need to create in order to maintain our creative energies. So stay tuned for that next week. For now, thank you so much for joining me on today's Thought Leader, where I am challenging you to activate the leader within. If you have yet to do so, please drop a rating and review on iTunes and share this podcast with a friend. I would love your support in getting this podcast into the earbuds of more like-minded, conscious, and fucking incredible leaders. So please do share this podcast with a friend, share it on your social media, just share it, support me, help me out. And if you want to connect with me on social media, you can do so. My handle is at I am Ruby. I tend to frequent Instagram and Twitter the most, so find me there. And I will see you back here on Monday for another brand new episode of Today's Thought Leader.